All right, let's begin. Our first lightning talk is by Thomas Graf. He'll be discussing whether the OVS community is open enough. I'm hoping that Betteridge's law of headlines fails here, but let's listen to what he has to say.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So this is I'm very fortunate, and I want to thank Ben for organizing the conference, and I'm glad I can talk about this topic, because this topic is something that is really close to my heart. I've been engaged with the OpenvSwitch community for a couple of years now, and it has always hurt me personally a little bit when somebody addressed the OpenvSwitch community as something that is closed, that is dominated by VMware, and that is not open to anybody, because I had personally a very different impression. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So first of all, some stats, some numbers. So this graph shows the number of added lines to the OVS repo since the beginning. And you can see Ben. Linear growth, right? And you can see everybody else down low. So maybe the question should be different. Maybe the question should be, is Ben open enough? So I'm drawing the first conclusion here. Ben is a coding machine. I can know. But things are improving a little bit. Like, this is the statistics that show who is the most active developer for every month. And in early years, it would just be Ben all the way, right? And it's changing a little bit. It's not always Ben. Ben is still usually the most active developer all around, but it changes. And you can see on the right side, or in the fourth column, you can see the next top 5 orders. And they're changing. So people have different amounts of time during the year. I think it's good. It looks like a healthy community. This is the number of commits by domain throughout the entire lifetime of OVS. And that picture is probably the one that everybody was expecting to see, because it shows the VMware or Nicira dominance. I think you will find this at almost any open source project, because it's a group of people starting a project. They will do all of the hard work, and then they will do the hard work of getting everybody else included. And that's not happening from day one. That takes some effort. If we do the same graph for just the kernel pieces, and this is actually not 100% accurate, because I did the stats for just the subdirectory net OpenvSwitch. It doesn't include the header files, but it shows a different picture. This shows the picture of who's contributed to the kernel, the Linux kernel data path, and that's much more well distributed. It's different people, different vendors. Some of them are not even working for a vendor. Some of them are working just for pure pleasure, private pure pleasure, right? So the second conclusion is, majority of commits still come from the original Nicira team, but it's balancing out. I think a better question is, instead of just looking at commits, is the OVS team effective as a team, as a community? And I think there's 3 very good examples of that show that it's very effective indeed. OVN, I think, is the prime example. OVN has been quick in coming up, and it was amazing to see how quick it got into a demo stage. And I think everybody agrees on the OVN team that it was not possible without effort from different vendors, from different people, all the way up in the full stack, from kernel, OVS, OVN, OpenStack, and so forth. Another one is stateful services, which require complex kernel work, and OVS relied on the expertise of various kernel folks, which didn't come from Nicira, and even were not interested in OVS early on, or they didn't have a main focus on OVS. And then the generic data path project, which brings OVS features back into the main kernel. To that said, OVS, becoming an OVS committer is not about being a vendor or coming from a particular vendor. It's all write code, do code reviews, spend time on OVS, and you can become an OVS committer. That's the policy. There's no mention of any vendor or company policy whatsoever. And I want to close with a particular example of OVS being very effective in the open source community in general, and that is we push back the original OVS concept of flow-based tunnels, which OVS had for a long time, and we made it available outside of OVS to the main kernel, and it was well received. In fact, Dave Miller, who's the main network maintainer, stated that in his pull request to Linus Torvalds that this is just another merge window, or this is just another set of changes. I've heard rumblings that the lightweight tunnel infrastructure have been voted networking change of the year, and I think this is coming from OVS. So like this is OVS functionality made available to the kernel, and the kernel folks have received it very well. So I think this is a prime example of why OVS is very successful and effective. So my personal conclusion, OVS is one of the most effective and well-governed open source projects, from my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas.